Thank you, Brian, for that really long reading. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lydia. It's really great to be with you today. I'm part of the team here. And all week when I've had this preach written out, it said, and a fun fact about me is, and ... But you'll be glad to know I actually do have a fun fact now. I was thinking about last time I preached was on the destruction of the temple. It was quite something. And today I'm talking about being a living temple. And so I think I'm just the go-to at St. James to talk about temples. Apparently, I know all things temples. I don't. What an exciting day we have ahead of us with our fireworks later. I think it's one of the best days in our church calendar. But I quite have a soft spot for this service before, a moment to pause before we go and do, and before it gets really busy here. Just a moment to pause and fix our eyes on Jesus. I think it's a really beautiful thing and not something that we should rush from. So we're quite a few weeks into our Royal Priesthood series looking at the book of 1 Peter, but we're only just coming into chapter 2. But I really like that we're taking it so slow. And today from the reading, you'll know that we're going to look at 2 verses today. But I love it because we don't have to rush them. We can really get into them and see what God is saying. So as we journey through these 2 verses, we're hopefully going to answer a question that one of my young people asked when we looked at these verses. I asked, anyone got any questions about this? And a hand flew up and they said, what's with all the rocks and stones? I was like, great question. What is with all the rocks and stones? Because this passage talks about stones and rocks a lot. In fact, in verses 4 to 8, the word stone is mentioned 5 times. That's a lot of times. Why is that? Is God calling us all to be builders and construction workers? I don't think he is. But if he is, there'll be prayer ministry for you after, for your construction worker. And it can feel weird for us. Why is he talking about stones so much? But the more I've journeyed with these 2 verses, the more I've seen that for a first century Jew who would have been reading this letter from Peter, the word stone would have carried a double promise. So the first one is, it was the great hope of Israel when they were in exile, when they were under occupation, throughout the 400 silent years between the last words in Malachi, one of the last prophets, and the birth of Jesus. The great hope was that the true God, Yahweh, would return to Jerusalem at last, coming back to live in the temple forever, once it had been rebuilt, because the temple had been destroyed. Again, I've got a preach on that if you'd like to go back and listen to the destruction of the temple. So it's a great hope for them that one day the temple will be rebuilt with stones and God will come and live again with them. We see in Ezekiel chapters 40 to 48 the vision of this future temple. Ezekiel is in exile and he's shown a detailed vision of a new temple. And God's glory, his presence, which had departed in Ezekiel chapter 10, returns to the people. It says, then the glory of the Lord entered the temple through the gate facing east, and the glory of the Lord filled the temple. We also see in Haggai, after the Babylonian exile, the people are told, they're given a command to rebuild the temple. In Haggai chapter 2, we see a promise. It says, the glory of this present house will be greater than the glory of the former house. And in this place, I will grant peace. In this place, I will grant peace. And yeah, this is talking about a literal rebuilding for the people to literally rebuild with stones the temple. But it's also prophetic. It's pointing towards Jesus, who in God's glory returns, who is named the Prince of Peace and comes in all glory and comes in great peace. In Zechariah, the prophet speaks of the branch, which means a sprout or new growth coming from the line of David, who would bring new life, justice, and peace, who will come and build the temple of the Lord. It says, tell him this is what the Lord Almighty says. Here is the man whose name is the branch, and he will branch out from his place and build the temple of the Lord. It is he who will build the temple of the Lord, and he will be clothed with majesty and will sit and rule on his throne. And he will be a priest on his throne, and there will be harmony between the two. All of these prophecies, yes, talk of a temple literally being rebuilt, but they talk of a Savior, the Messiah from the line of David, coming to rule and reign, bringing new life, justice, and peace. So I said we were going to answer a question about rocks and stones, and you might be like, "That you've not really answered my question. You've just given me a lot of Bible verses to read." Well, the tradition of speaking about the temple being built was about talking about it being built on the rock, on the cornerstone. And the cornerstone was the first stone that was set in the construction of the foundation. It had to be perfectly shaped, and it had to be strong, because it determined the strength, shape, and direction of the whole structure. And once the cornerstone was laid, every other stone was measured and placed around it. The cornerstone was the most important stone in any building, keeping everything strong, straight, and connected. If you find the right stone to be your cornerstone, then you may be on the way to building a new temple, ready for God to return, bringing with him new life, justice, and peace. You may be on your way to seeing these prophecies come to pass. This is why the stone's important, because once the cornerstone is in, you're on your way to the temple being built and the presence of the Lord returning. So there's the first promise around stones. Find the right cornerstone, and you're a step closer to the temple being rebuilt and the glory of God returning. So the second of the promises will be great for you guys that like words, but it will come up on the screen, because when I was figuring this out, it hurt my head a little bit. So it's all about words. So the word stone in ancient Hebrew is very like the word for sun, as in the Son of God, not the sun in the sky, just in case you needed. So just like our word for sun has 3 out of the 4 letters of the word stone, it's the same in Hebrew. We can see that Hebrew, the word for sun is ben, and the word for stone is eben. It's pointing to the Son of God, who is going to come, and just as it says in Zechariah, that he will build the temple and he will be clothed with majesty and will sit and rule on his throne. It's pointing to Jesus being the cornerstone, the stone that the builders rejected, but that has become the cornerstone, the most important stone in the whole building. And so we can see that in the context of the day, why Peter's talking about stones so much, because it would have meant something to the readers of the day. He's saying, hey guys, don't you get it? Jesus, he fulfills the ancient hope. He fulfills all these ancient prophecies. He is the cornerstone. Peter is pointing them to Jesus. In describing the church as God's spiritual temple, Peter is drawing on several Old Testament texts that's familiar to the Jewish Christian readers. Psalm 118, verse 22, the stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. Other prophecies in Isaiah 8 and 28. Peter's readers would have understood the living stones to be Israel. And then Peter applies the image of cornerstone to Christ. Once again, Peter is showing that the church does not cancel out the Jewish heritage, but fulfills it. And that's why I love that we're taking this sermon series so slow, because it gives us space and time to look at the heritage and the culture and the context of the day, and it ignites the passage, it brings it to life, and we understand, oh, that's why he's talking about stones so much. It's not that he's just really into stones. It means something, it has meaning and purpose. Peter portrays the church as a living spiritual temple with Christ as the foundation and cornerstone, and each believer as a stone. In a similar way, Paul portrays the church as a body with Christ as the head and each believer as a member. Both of these pictures is putting an emphasis on community. So we're called to be stones. As you can see, I've got some bricks here from outside. They're very dirty, so I'm not going to hold it for long. But I think we could all agree that this one stone is not a temple, right? Are we all in? It's not even really a wall. This one stone is, well, it's just a stone, really. Like, this isn't a temple. It's not even a wall. It is just a stone. And if it was the temple where the glory of the Lord was meant to reside, it's pretty naff, isn't it? It's just one stone. And in our individualistic society, it's easy to forget our interdependence on other Christians. So later we're going to put on a massive event where hundreds of people are going to come into our building and we're going to welcome them in. But we couldn't do that alone. I've watched this week Janet preparing and coordinating and doing several things for the fireworks. And Janet is really amazing. But the fireworks wouldn't work if only Janet did something for fireworks. She can't welcome people in, cook 700 sausages, serve food, serve drinks, be on first aid, be on youth, sort the crafts, make sure everyone has an amazing time, make sure everyone feels welcomed in, perform the live music, and set the fireworks off, all while making sure people are safe. She is good, but she's not that good. She can't do it by herself. But together, as we work together, as we help each other and we bring our different gifts and talents, we'll put on a really great event. And all of those things that I listed and more will happen when we work together, when we play our part. So when God calls you to a task, remember that he's also calling others with you to build the temple. He's not calling you to just be one brick by yourself. Another thing that would have struck the readers of the day is this invitation for all to be a part of this. This is where I get a bit geeky and talk about Leviticus for a little bit, but I won't. I've cut it down, I promise. I wanted to do more, but I've cut it down. You see, within the Jewish law, you had to be born into a certain family, the line of Aaron, to be a Levitical priest and to be part of the priesthood. You couldn't earn it. There was nothing that you could do to deserve this place. And of course, you had to work hard if you were a Levitical priest. And we see many examples where they've not taken it that seriously and they've been struck down in the temple. So I'm not saying that you just get born into that line, you do whatever you want. They had to work hard and take it seriously. But they had to be born in the family line to enter into the Holy of Holies. No if, buts, or maybes. There was no hoops to jump through to earn it. No university degrees to achieve to earn it. You had to be in the family line. And we see in Leviticus how Aaron and his sons are set apart. In Leviticus 8, there's a public ceremony where Moses gathers all the people in, and Aaron and his sons are washed with water, and then they're dressed in their priestly garments. And then the tabernacle and its furnishings are anointed. And then there are several offerings given to purify them. And a ram of ordination is offered, and Moses places some of its blood on Aaron and his sons' right ear, thumb, and big toe. Ew. And this symbolizes that their hearing, their actions, and their walk belong to God. But now Peter is saying, hey, we can all be a part of this, and you don't need to get your big toes out. We can just be part of this. He's saying that not just all of the Jewish people can be a part of this, but there's an invite for the Gentiles too. This is scandalous. This is radical. When the original readers would have read this, this is going against all of the Levitical law. This is scandalous. Not only is Peter saying Jesus is God, and not only does Paul say he's the high priest, now Peter's saying, well, you can be part of this as well. So when I was thinking about this being set apart and this idea of it, it made me think about something that happened in the summer. So me and Sophie went to Big Church Festival, and we had an amazing time. We had the best time. However, there was one downside, and it was the toilets. There is a picture, not of a toilet, just the outside, the toilets. They were the worst portaloos I've ever experienced. And I'm like, listen, you need to go, you go. I'm not one of these that is funny about a toilet, but these portaloos were something else. They were like nothing I've ever experienced, with a smell that like stayed in your throat. You know, I'm just trying to paint a picture for you all to be in this. They were grim. I'm talking mud, mysterious puddles, that smell that makes you question every life choice that brought you here. But one evening we were headed back to our tent, and we saw a sign that said glamping this way. We didn't have glamping tickets, but we thought, well, we'll just go and have a look at what it might look like. And when we got down there, they said, can we see your wristbands, please? And we quickly flashed our wristbands. It was dark. They didn't know. And they let us in to the glamping toilets. And we weren't going to question it. And we waited in quite a large queue, but it was worth it. Oh my goodness, was it worth it? How I described it at the time was like somebody's nice downstairs toilet. You know, like a posh downstairs, understairs loo. They had a light, a mirror, a proper flush, a bin, soap, and a hand dryer. Whoa, thank you. We were really in need of good facilities. And we had the best time in these toilets. And we did sneak into them the next night. I've got a clip, which you won't be able to see us, but you'll be able to hear how glorious we found these toilets when you listen to this video clip. We've done it again.
We've done it again. We've done it again. Champions of toilets.
We were the champions of toilets. And just to say, we are going to pay for glamping next year. It was just a trial run, just to see whether it was worth the money. And it was. But we came out of those toilets feeling renewed. But you could only go in if you had a certain wristband, apparently. We got in twice, you know. But as funny as that is, it made me think, you know, in the Old Testament, that's what it was like spiritually. I don't know what the toilets were like in the temple, so we're just going to talk spiritually. That only a certain group of people with the right wristband could go into God's presence. The priests from Aaron's family line, and everyone else had to stay outside. But Peter comes along and says something radical. He says, you've all got a wristband now. You can all go in. Through Jesus, you have been invited in. That you don't have to sneak your way in like we did, or pretend that you belong. Because while we were in that queue, we were talking about, so when we get back to our glamping pods, and we didn't even walk straight out. We walked through the glamping to pretend that we were part of it. But you don't have to pretend that you belong. You do belong. You've been washed, clothed, anointed, and welcomed by grace. That's what it means to be part of this royal priesthood, to be a living stone, that we're set apart, yeah, but we're also invited in It's not an exclusive privilege. It's a holy invitation. That we also, through the death and resurrection of Jesus and faith in his death and resurrection and life, that we are a royal priesthood called by God. And so as I come into land, I want to take us back to right at the start of verse 4. It says, as you come to him, the living stone. The Amplified translation says, come to him, the risen Lord. In the original Greek, this word come or coming means coming to remain. Come and remain. To remain in Christ's fellowship. You are coming. There is an invitation here to come, to be part of something. The Message translation says, present yourselves as building strokes for the construction of a sanctuary vibrant with life. For the construction of a sanctuary vibrant with life. This is an invitation for all of us, a radical invitation to come, to be part of something that is vibrant with life. And I can hear the thoughts in the room, the thoughts that kind of discount ourselves. And I saw this brick outside when it's very muddy, but it's like not even a full brick and it's caked in mud. And I felt like some of us might feel like this today. Like, why would God want me part of his living temple when I'm not even like a fully functional brick? I'm not even a full brick, and I'm dirty and I'm broken and I'm like, what good am I like this? It's very dirty. Why would God want me to be part of this? But I want to remind you of the cornerstone that was laid, and every other stone was measured and placed around it. And that the cornerstone is the most important stone in the whole building, keeping everything strong, straight, and connected. It's Jesus' job to be the cornerstone, to be the strong stone, to be the perfect stone that's laid, to be the one that is the strong foundation. Jesus' job to keep everything in line. It says we're being built up into a spiritual house. And for me, this gives me great comfort. That I just need to come as I am, and that God will build me up. That it's a process. That he isn't waiting for me to be a finished article before I come to him. That he is building me up. I saw a quote on Instagram this week that will come up. It's already there. Fantastic. It spoke so kindly to my heart. It said, Jesus didn't say, come to me, all who are crushing it and living your best life, and I will give you rest. He said, come to me, all who are weary, and I will give you rest. And so if you're discouraged, tired, or weary, don't worry. That's exactly how Jesus expected you to come to him. It's exactly how Jesus expected you to come to him. So I'd love to invite the band up, and we're going to move into a space of response. As we think about this coming and being living stones with Christ as our firm foundation. And we're going to go into communion after a time of worship. And there's space to respond to what we've heard and what God is doing in this place today. Come to the table and know that there is an invitation for you. When we were at the adults retreat, Beth and Asha gave me a word, and part of this word, she said, it's not on you to reckon with whether you're deserving of coming to the table. It's not on you to reckon with whether you're deserving of coming to the table. God is building. Jesus is the cornerstone. And there's no pressure here. There's no pressure to form yourself into a neat, shiny, well-formed brick before you come. There's no pressure to have it all together. But there's an invitation to come just as you are. Let God shape you. Let God build you up into this living stone. And come and play your part. Don't be the one stone trying to do it by themselves, because you won't get very far. Come and be built into something that is vibrant and is life-giving. Come today.